Okay. But we only have about half of an ability, so let's keep going. So now we're going to say, while we have at least one target, for each target that we have, do the following. We are going to damage the target. We're going to modify their health. This time it's going to be damage. It'll be 50 damage per second. And then we're going to draw a beam from us to them. I really wish I could work this fast. All I have are these stupid human hands. So. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. There we are, damaging our enemies. And we can see the beams, so everything seems to be working right. Getting some kills, all right. But it was really easy for that tracer to get away. After all, we are moving at about half speed. So we could take away that penalty, but let's do something a little more zany, a little more out there, and I don't know, force the enemies to crouch whenever they're getting hit by the beams. So, I don't know, hopefully no one complains about that. There they are, they're crouching. Now they can't get away. Ha ha. All right, team kill, yay! Okay, Overwatch. Okay, BlizzCon. You're not Overwatch, you're BlizzCon. So, how did we do? Do you guys think that we should add this as an official ability into Overwatch? We probably shouldn't. It's not a very good ability. But that's okay, we only spent a few minutes on it. We can just try again, no big deal. And we keep doing this, we keep iterating until we find out what's fun, and only then do we bring in the rest of the developers. So speaking of which, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, a good friend of mine, artist extraordinaire. Please everyone give a warm welcome to Mr. Matt Taylor.
Hey, what's up, BlizzCon? My name is Matt. I'm a senior character artist on the Overwatch team. My job is to take these amazing character designs and build them out in 3D. That means modeling, sculpting, texturing, and most importantly, making sure that they can actually animate. Because we're not just making statues here, we're making Overwatch heroes, and they need to be able to move. Trying to figure out how a character, even how a giant robot is supposed to move and transform, that's what I really geek out on. And that's why today, I'd like to share with you how I made the model for Wrecking Ball's robot. So I knew this robot was going to have to be a ball. It's Wrecking Ball, right? Well, maybe. There we go. But it would also sometimes have to be a crab. Maybe. And that meant that our model would need to transform between the two. And that for each piece on that model, I would need to keep track of where it was in each pose and how it got there. So I decided to start with the ball because I knew it would be a lot easier to take that and break it up into a crab than to go the other way around with the crab and force it back into a ball. So working from a loose concept, I started to sculpt in where I thought those panel lines should go. I knew this was only meant to be a rough sketch and that I didn't need to worry about working cleanly or anything just yet. I just wanted to lay something out quickly that I could start to build on top of later. This part's actually a lot of fun too because you're pretty much just playing around in digital clay. It's freaking awesome. So when I was happy with that rough sketch, I started to draw points on top of it to create new geometry. But unlike our ball that was all one piece, this new geometry would be separated along the panel lines that we just drew earlier. And this is actually really important too because we know that to make the crab transformation actually work, we're going to need to move each of those pieces out independently. And we just can't do that if it's all combined. So I continued drawing on the rough sketch until I had covered it entirely with that new separated geometry. And then I broke it up. I started to move out each piece into the crab form, setting keyframes so that at any time I could scrub back and forth between the two poses. I knew that any change I made to the model in crab mode, it was going to be really important that it still fit seamlessly back into the ball. I continued to refine the model and add thickness to all of the pieces until we had our first block out that we could use to test in the game. Now, it was still a little rough, but at least by now we were starting to get a pretty good idea of what Wrecking Ball was going to look like, and we could compare him to the rest of the game and characters and see whether or not he was going to fit in. So great. We have our first block out done, but there's still a lot more to do. I continued to iterate on the rest of the model trying to figure out how everything worked in just a little bit more detail. I think that it's really important that on mechanical models like this guy, that things don't squash and stretch the same way that they do on some of our human heroes. I want each piece to be able to stay rigid as it moves, to help reinforce the idea that it's made of metal and not something soft. Preparation is also key at this stage too, because if we don't plan for it here, it's just not going to happen in the final animation. So I need to work very closely with my technical artist and animator to make sure that we get everything right before we move on. Like, do we need a pivot joint here or a ball socket there? Does this limb need to telescope out to hit extreme poses? This is my favorite part of the whole process because most of the iteration is going to happen right here, where the model is still rough and easy to change. So this was the basic process that we used to prototype the Wrecking Ball transformation. As I moved on to do the arms and the other limbs, I pretty much used the same technique. I start with a rough model in a starting pose, and I work through every transformation with simple animations, iterating over and over until it actually works. Going through this process helps to make sure that when I'm ready to pass the model off to be animated, that it's ready to go. Here's a shot of every stage the Wrecking Ball mech went through from start to finish. And lastly, here's where we ended up with the final mesh. But unfortunately, even after all that work, this model is still not going to move in the game. Not without a little help, anyway. And I know just the person for the job. He's my good friend, Mr. Dylan Jones. Come on out here, buddy. Let's get these heroes moving.
Hello. It's an honor to be here. My name is Dylan Jones, and I am the lead character technical artist on Overwatch. Now, the first thing you might be asking yourself is, what is a character technical artist, aside from a mouthful? Well, we deal with the technical side of the character art. And so to be less vague, one of the areas we focus in is making the characters able to move. And before we jump right into it, I want to look at a simple example. Puppets. So the process we take an Overwatch hero through is very similar to the process of creating a puppet. When you start off, you have a static figure. You can pick this figure up, you can move it around, but you can't really interact with it in a meaningful way. You can't pose it, and you can't bring it to life. So the first step we do is we're going to break this out into separate body parts. Here we're defining what parts are going to move. The next step for us is we attach those body parts to each other. So we do that with a thing called joints. And at this stage, we have something that's similar to an action figure. So we can pick up the guy or girl, hero, and we can pose them, and we can move them, but we can't quite bring them to life yet until we add this device on top of the puppet. And now, with the flick of a wrist, we are able to bring this character to life, like so. All right, so now let's jump right into it. So, when tech art gets an Overwatch hero, it comes in as a static mesh. The static mesh looks very pretty, but it doesn't really do much other than that. A static mesh is made up of a bunch of these little dots. Anywhere from 10 to 40,000 of these dots make up an Overwatch hero. So at this stage, much like the puppet example, we can move the whole character around, but we can't really interact with them in a meaningful way. We can move the whole character, we can rotate it, but we can't pose it, we can't bring it to life. It's not very fun yet. So the next step for us is we're going to create a skeleton. A skeleton allows us to define what is going to move where and how things follow each other. Once we have the skeleton created, we then put that skeleton inside of the character mesh. So here's an example of the skeleton rotating. And what we're doing at this point is we're defining how the body parts all go together. So here you can see how an elbow works and then how our shoulders work. So then the next step for us is we're going to put that skeleton inside of the hero. Once we have that skeleton inside of the hero, we need to tell each dot on the mesh how to follow the skeleton. So up at the top, we've assigned all of the red dots to that upper arm bone. So all of the red dots are going to follow the upper arm. We've assigned all the blue dots at the bottom to follow the lower arm. And the purple dots in between, those are the areas that blend between the two bones. And so what you end up with is a result like this. It's pretty cool. So we repeat that process for the 10 to 40,000 dots on the mesh and for every single bone in the skeleton until we are at our action figure stage. So at this point with the hero, we can interact with them. We can pose them, we just can't easily bring them to life with animation. Hi, Lucio. All right, so the next step for us is those puppet strings. We call the puppet strings a rig. A rig is a control structure on top of that action figure base that allows animators to easily interact with the Overwatch heroes. The rig allows animators to do things like just grab the hand and put it where they want it to go. And now they don't have to rotate each bone individually to get the hand to go where it wants. They can just grab the hips and move them around. And now the legs automatically bend for you. You don't have to go and grab each knee and bend them manually. And when you move the leg, the ankle, the knee, and the thigh, they all go for you. So these are some of the main concepts of the character rig. Then we go and we move on and we focus on some of the smaller details. So one of the really fun details is the face rig. So here, when an animator opens the jaw, we have tons of joints in the face, and all those joints move nice and smooth, so the animators don't have to worry about it. They just worry about making the mouth open. We also allow a lot of posability and bendability in our heroes. It helps add overlapping action. So here's an example of one of the areas where they can easily kind of wiggle the body around to create some cool motion. Another thing we deeply care about is smooth deformations on our character meshes. So when a character rotates something like the wrist, we try to make that wrist deformation happen throughout the whole wrist. Instead of having one ugly twist right here, we spread it out throughout the whole arm. And one of Reddit's favorite, we also spend a lot of time on small details, like McCree's flip-flop. So once you combine all of these small little elements, you have a completed rig. And once you have a completed rig, you are ready to create an animation. So here's one of our more complicated animations of Bastion transforming. We're going to play it again slowly, and if you look, the rig allows Bastion to actually transform. Every little bit, every little part is actually there, comes out and actually transforms, and then goes back in. It's very fun. So at this stage, the character is ready to be animated, but character technical artists, we do a lot of different things. So the next process for us is we're going to set the character up in the engine. So here's an example of Lucio in our game engine. And what we're focusing on here is we're making the character ready for gameplay. We're making sure you can shoot the character. We're making sure they have hard points. We're making sure that they can die properly. Once we've done all these technical little bits of the hero, then we hook them up in the game for everyone else to play with. So here we have Lucio in the game, but he's not completely set up yet. You'll notice something happens when we shoot him. He doesn't die. He just kind of sits there like a static statue. And that's because we haven't added the physics yet. So let's add some physics and see what happens. Oh my lordy, that's not pretty. We got to fix that. Just so you can get a good sense of what's happening, we're going to watch this one again. But essentially, we've added physics to his body parts, but we haven't told them how to follow each other yet. So he turns into a spaghetti monster. All right. So the next step for us is we're going to tell these body parts how to follow each other when we go into Ragdoll. And again, we go back to our engine, and we do that with these things called physics joints. So here we go through each body part again. We go through all the body parts lots of different times. And now we go through all the body parts, and we're saying, hey, when you turn physical, you're allowed to move this much. You're allowed to rotate that much. And once we've repeated that process for all the parts, now the character can die and stay together properly. Let's make sure he's dead. All right, and just final check. Okay, yes, he's dead. All right, so now the character is hooked up to the engine. We can play with the character, we can shoot it, it dies properly. The character is now ready for animation. And on that note, I would like to introduce one of the greatest animators in the world, Jesse Davis!
Hey BlizzCon, how are you doing? My name is Jesse Davis. I'm one of the animators on the Overwatch team. And today I want to talk to you about ideating and prototyping a new hero for Overwatch. So why do we ideate and prototype? Well, for one, we want to create alignment between all the animators on the animation team in order to better understand this new character, find out their likes, dislikes, kind of what they do every day. And also be able to create clear communication when we author animations for gameplay. So we start with a few tools early off. Dylan mentioned the rigs, and today I want to talk to you about Ash and Wrecking Ball in particular. So when we begin ideating, we first have a little powwow meeting between all the animators, Michael Chu, our lead writer, and Arnold Tsang, the assistant art director. We kind of discuss again what they might dance like, what they like to eat, their interests and hobbies, and kind of brainstorm some emote and play the game ideas or just gameplay, how they might move and stuff like that. We also record live reference of each other. We like to act out and kind of get in the mind of this new character and try to figure out their physicality and how they might move. We also pull reference from the internet, comics, movies that we love, generally anything to help us get a better idea of who this new character is. We also get a design prototype. So the designers have spent some time now putting in this new character into the game to figure out their gameplay. We have the ability of putting animations from another character onto a brand new mesh. So here you can see Ash is actually using Widowmaker's animations. Here's a Wrecking Ball prototype. You'll notice here that he actually had his flamethrowers early on. The third-person mesh that you see right there kind of just slides around at this point. There isn't really any animation to keep him going. So then we begin prototyping. First thing we think about in first person is kind of their key idle pose. How do you see them 90% of the time when you're playing them in game? Here again, you can see Wrecking Ball's previous version with the flamethrowers. We kind of took that, we moved to a Gatling gun mechanic, and then began kind of ideating what their main pose might be. So after we got a couple versions of this, we do yet another paint over of this new weapon, kind of combine it with one of our previous versions that we've blocked out, and then finally get the version that you see that's in game right now. For third-person prototyping, we begin with the gameplay pose as well, but this time we're trying to pick a new silhouette for this character and make them stand out from existing characters in the cast. Here you can see Widowmaker and Anna both have rifles. Ash also has a rifle, so it's important to make her stand out when standing among the other two. And then we move into movement prototyping. We get to play with some of the personality now and how they move around in the world. Here for Wrecking Ball, we had a couple different versions animated by Marcus Hammerstedt, Matt Lawrence, and Craig Harris. We experimented with gait, which is the stride length, how bouncy they are, how much they move around in the cockpit, and Hammett in this case. But in the end, settled on more of a crab-like reference for him, and influence in his character movement as well. For Wrecking Ball, we also had the opportunity to play with jumping. So we tried a 2D animation this time to try to get some of the character motion and feeling of how Hammond might jump. We got him kind of bouncing around a lot in this 3D prototype, but in the end settled for more of a subdued jump animation, taking into consideration the gameplay ramifications of having such a pushed animation, mainly to allow easier headshots. So, in review, why do we ideate and prototype? Well, to create alignment between everybody, to focus on understanding this new character and their likes and dislikes, and to create compelling gameplay animations that are clear and concise. And speaking of gameplay, I'd like to bring out Kyle Rao, who will talk to you more about modeling weapons for first person.
Hello, BlizzCon. I'm Kyle Rao. I'm a senior 3D artist on the Overwatch team, and I mostly focus on modeling and texturing our weapons. So today I'm going to talk to you about the initial process we go through, all the way from the beginning and to our final asset. So there's two things that I mostly focus on as a 3D artist for weapons. One of those is making the visuals match the gameplay. And also, one of my favorite things is making things look good in first person. It's a locked camera perspective, and it has some little bit of tricks here and there with that. So now, when I talk about the visuals matching the gameplay design, I mean things like a long-range rifle should have a long barrel to communicate what it's made for. Or a laser coming out of a, a slower projectile probably shouldn't be a laser. It should be a laser. Now, for gameplay design, you can think of it in terms of things like what the rate of fire is. Is it full auto or semi-auto? or even the projectile speed. If it's really fast, it probably should be bullets. Or even the clip size. If the clip size is really small, maybe 6, for example, could we actually show the ammunition on the gun itself, kind of like Farah's rifle? Now, speaking of Farah's rifle and showing the ammo on the actual weapon itself, we sort of ran into an issue with this. Farah's rifle, you can see 5 of her 6 rockets at all time when you're in a full clip. But what if we wanted to change that? What if we wanted 8, or 20, or 3? I think there'd be a lot of weapon models that I'd have to go change and edit for that. So because of that, we come up with 3D art that's more flexible with gameplay design. An example of that is for Junkrat's gun, he actually has 2 firing animations. Now, the first one you see on the left, that's his normal fire loop. He only actually has 2 grenades in there. It doesn't matter how much ammo he actually has. And then when he's 2 or less ammo, it plays a second animation. You can see that little mechanical shovel bit kind of pushing in the last few grenades. This allows designers, when we're figuring out the weapon and all the development cycle with it, that we can actually change the ammunition, the art will work with it. We actually did the same exact thing on Wrecking Ball. So on the left, this is his normal weapon fire cycle animation. It's a little loop. But then when he's low on ammo, you see a different animation play, and it cycles the last amount of remaining ammo through. Now, for the art aspect, how weapons really start is what we call the initial hero concept, or the initial ideation. This is a really rough version of the weapon. It's just the idea of it. The weapon's definitely going to change all throughout development. And with that, I, the 3D artist, will start a prototype 3D blockout. This is a really messy blockout. It's not going to be a final asset by any means. It's definitely going to change. This is really meant to prototype and test out models in the first-person view when we're still prototyping the hero. Now, designing actual art for first-person camera can be a little bit tricky. By tricky, I mean things scale and skew sort of differently in first person. As you can see from this video, the rockets on Farah's gun actually look much bigger in first person. They almost look half the length of the entire gun. But in third person, they're very small. Things scale and kind of look skewed a little bit in this first-person perspective. So because of that, we actually spend a lot of time getting an actual angle for the weapon in first person. So here's some different angles that we actually tried for Ash's rifle. And you can see each of these kind of give a different feeling of size or accuracy or where the character's holding it. And this is the final weapon position we decided on. Now, once we have that weapon position decided on, we take the blockout model that you saw me modeling earlier. Here's some models of, these are very early blockout models of some ones you probably recognize. And I'll actually hand this off to our concept artists. Now, what concept artists do is they actually will draw over this. This is a nice line art drawing of a more polished weapon with details on it. And me, the 3D artist, will actually use this to model the final asset from. So now that we have the concept, we have the final weapon position, now it's time to go through the entire art 3D process. Now, this is a really long process. There's a lot of steps here. It involves making a high-res model, a low-res model, some textures, transferring data from one to the other. This is some high-poly progress on his rifle. Now, once the final asset is done, getting it into the game, I actually work with the guys you heard from earlier, our tech artists and our animators. We add a bone structure to the gun. And yeah, actually, weapons have bone structures too. They look a little bit strange and not like characters, but they allow all these mechanical bits to move as well. So with a little help from them, we get hooked up in the game, and we have the final asset, as you guys know. Now, there's a lot of love and care that goes into making the weapons of Overwatch, making their design communicate the gameplay visually, and also look really good in that locked camera perspective that I have to work with. I hope you enjoyed a look into my first-person camera world. Up next, we're going to have Chris Wilson. He's going to talk to you about the magic of visual effects. Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Wilson, and I'm a senior effects artist on Overwatch. And today, I'm here to talk to you about making the effects for one of my personal favorite heroes, Symmetra, specifically her ultimate ability. And I do really mean one of my personal favorite heroes. She's currently my second most played. So, as an effects artist, I have 3 main goals when I'm working. The first is to communicate the gameplay. If you can't tell what the gameplay is from the effect isn't doing its job. The second is to make it performant, which just means to make it run efficiently. If it doesn't run well, it doesn't play well. And the third is to make it look good, but we want to make sure it doesn't come at too much of a cost to performance. One task that balancing all of these was a challenge with was Symmetra's ult. So at first glance, it looks like a very simple ability. Put a giant plane in the world, make it glowy, and you're done, right? Well, actually, this ability went through many, many different iterations on both the tech side and the art side to find the best way to finally implement it into the game. So this is the very first iteration that we ever put into the game. And it's kind of terrible. It breaks all 3 of those rules that I just mentioned. It's visually noisy, and it's hard to see, so it's not communicating the gameplay. It's using an old version of our shield material, which is very expensive, on an object that covers the entire map. So it's not performant. And in terms of looks, it's a little boring. But even though this iteration isn't all that great, it's perfect for where we are in the process right now. Before we spend a lot of time making final art and polishing everything, we want to make sure that we know the ability is fun. So for the second iteration, we basically fancied up the previous one I just showed you. We took the hexes and we made them a lot brighter and gave them some vertical motion. This helped with initially grabbing your attention, but a side effect of this change was that it made the wall hard to see in between the waves of hexes. It was a bit better on the performance side since we made the material a little bit more efficient. And it was starting to get better in terms of looks. But there was still room for improvement. So one issue with both of these iterations is that they're transparent. And with transparency, sometimes comes issues with this thing we call sort order. Sort order is kind of a little bit of a complicated topic. But when you break it down, it's basically, is this object in front or behind another object? For solid objects, this is really straightforward. If it's in front, we render it, and if it's behind, we don't. But with transparent objects, you need to see both in front and behind it. So, and the way we know what's in front or behind an object is by comparing the size and locations of those 2 objects. On the left, we have our lovable one-man Apocalypse safely behind Symmetra's ult. But on the right, it looks like he's in front of the wall, when he's actually in the same exact spot as the picture on the left. So in order to address those sorting issues, we scrapped everything, started over, and simplified it a lot. We got rid of any transparency that wasn't completely see-through, and we made the rest of the wall completely opaque, which forces it to sort properly. So problem solved, right? Well, this made it easier to see where the wall actually was since there weren't any sorting issues. But now it felt like you could shoot through the empty spaces in the hexes, which doesn't communicate the gameplay at all. What is good, though, is that this version was a whole lot better on the performance side. And in terms of looks, I'd say it's starting to get there. To address the issue of the empty spaces, we added this layer of transparent hexes that would oscillate their brightness. This helped with communicating the gameplay that you can't shoot through the wall by giving it some visual substance. We also added a bright intersection line wherever the wall cut through objects to give you a better sense of where it is in the world. In terms of performance, this one was fine, and it's also starting to look kind of cool. But since we're adding in a transparent object again, that pesky problem of sort order is back. So to fix the issue with sort order, I worked with one of our rendering engineers, Ryan Green, to come up with this solution that you see. Instead of having one giant plane cut through the entire map, we break it up into different sized pieces based on how close you are to it and the angle at which you view it from. What this allows us to do is instead of trying to figure out how to sort every single object in the map, either in front or behind this giant wall, we can do it on a much smaller case-by-case basis. So you can reliably know if that Roadhog is going to hook you or not. And when you combine all of these pieces and techniques together, you get Symmetra's deceptively complex ult. But effects aren't the only thing that we use to communicate gameplay and add personality to our heroes. Up next is Paul, who's going to show you how sound plays a critical role in hero development.
All right. Hello, my name is Paul Lackey. I am the sound design supervisor for the Overwatch team, and I'm going to be sharing with you how we use sound to help add character and personality to our heroes. Now, for Overwatch heroes, sound has a few different roles. We support functional requirements, so things like running, jumping, shooting. We try to provide gameplay information by letting players know when they're taking damage. And we also help add character and personality. And it's this last role that I want to explore with you by reviewing the sound design for Bastion. And Bastion was one of the heroes that I most enjoyed getting to work on. So this is how Bastion began. We actually called him Gunbot. And he was just a machine that spewed out bullets. So that's perfect for an FPS sound designer. I mean, I make some weapon sounds, I do some robot mechanics, I'm done. But no, our concept team thought that Gunbot was missing something. So besides a brand new name, they gave Bastion a flying friend. Now this changed everything, because now suddenly this killing machine, he had a caring, sensitive, nurturing side. So Bastion was going to need emotional range. And providing some emotion and a bit of personality to Bastion and his pal Ganymede, that became our challenge. Creatively, we were trying to find a way to make Bastion huggable. So when I began work on Bastion sounds, I started out only using sound effects and synthesis, trying to create a real expressive palette for Bastion's vocals. And here's a bit of what I created. So there's a few interesting bits in there, but this process was going to take a very, very long time. And honestly, the sounds, they kind of lacked emotional depth. I mean, it was a little bit random to take one sound effect and define it as one of Bastion's emotions. Now, people spend their whole lives listening to voices. We hear the pitch, the pace, the tone, the intonation, and that makes us really good at understanding if someone is angry, if they're happy, or if they're sad, whether or not we actually speak the same language. So this makes voice an excellent tool to use for encoding emotion. So with that in mind, I switched gears, and I began looking for ways to use my voice as the input to drive some sort of synthesis processing. The technique is not new. Sound designers have done it for decades, but it was a first time for me. So after a few hours of turning knobs, I came up with a processing chain that I thought worked pretty well for my voice. Didn't know I could sound like that. Now, there were some interesting bits there that either were hinting at what Bastion was going to become. But when I played this prototype for our creative director at the time, a guy named Chris Metzen, he was a little bit lukewarm on what he heard. So crushed, I went back to my studio and spent 2 more days coming up with all kinds of alternate options, trying to find a way to keep Bastion, make him even more expressive. And I was getting nervous because I wasn't coming up with anything that I thought worked better. But what I came to realize through all the experimentation and struggling with this problem was that the combination of voice and software was really better performed like an instrument as opposed to just being combined as a formula. So the performer really mattered. So let's get me out of the equation and let's get someone who can perform. Chris Metzen agreed to come to my office and give it a try. He's a character in life anyway, and he got right into character with Bastion. So that's what I heard, but Chris had on the headphones, and what he was hearing were very cute, expressive, the Bastion-y tones that we had been searching for. So this convinced us that this approach was going to work, and we scheduled a voiceover session. For some reason, even wrote Chris a script, and within about 1 hour, we had all of Bastion's sounds.
We are going to attempt to record sounds for Bastion. So that just left Ganymede. We had Bastion taken care of, but Ganymede was going to need an equally endearing personality. Now, just like voice, music is another excellent tool to use for encoding emotion. And Ganymede's a bird, so he can sing. He's just not going to be singing with words, just needed a way to make him lyrical. Now, at first I thought, well, I'll use birdsong. And actual recordings of birdsong, I figured out finally, was that that's not going to be any different than when I tried cutting up random sound effects and putting them on Bastion. So random birdsong probably wasn't the way to go either. But somehow Ganymede needed to have human-like qualities. And as I'm pondering this problem, very much by coincidence, one of our sound designers, a guy named Justin DeClute, was whistling down the hallway, and he had this real happy, chipper tone. I'm like, whoa, wait, Justin, can you come in here and can you do some more whistling for me? So it might sound familiar. All that needed to happen to bring Ganymede to life was to just speed up the recording. So if you've seen the entire animated short, then you know Bastion and Ganymede, they were able to tell a very, very beautiful story without ever speaking a word. Well, thank you for letting me share with you how we use sound to help add character and personality. And I'm going to bring back a character that you've already seen. He's back there. The Doom Fist of production. We've got Adam Gershowitz. Thank you.
All right, folks. So I warned you, production's at the front and the back. So that brings our presentation to a close today. We're a little short on time, so I want to do two things. One, can we have a big round of applause, not just for our presenters, but all of the developers that helped bring Overwatch Heroes to life? The second thing we wanted to do was answer questions, but because we jam-packed so much content in, we didn't have enough time to do it here today. So instead, what we're going to be doing is bringing all of the development team over to the signing booth after this presentation. So if you have questions for us, come over to Hall A, visit us at the developer signing table, and ask any questions you want. The guys and girls on the team are massively excited about the game. They're massively excited about talking with you, and we're happy to answer anything you might have. Thank you again, BlizzCon. It was great sharing our world with you. Have a great show.
Thank you for attending Overwatch Building a Hero.
Rig, because it doesn't look like that rig can do that.
That's exactly right, yeah. So he has two sets of wings, basically. We have a bone count, basically. We can only have so many joints implemented on a character, and we really, because he has so much cloth, and we really wanted to have a lot of fun with the classic Malthael wings that you recognize from his cinematics, and so that's where Thomas and I worked really closely together. So I would animate a second set in a scene where the only thing in that scene is a set of wings, and then it gets attached in game. And what happens is these wings get scaled down instantly inside of his back. They're still there, they're just hidden. And then the new set of wings get instantly on the same frame displayed. Did you have anything you wanted to show to that?
Yeah, that was actually something I was going to show towards the end, but check it out. So as Karina said, his ability wings are a completely separate model. We built this, again, cross-department. It was modeled by me, the textures and the material work and the effects and smoke that go with it, but it was rigged by Stephen Miranda, who was up here earlier, and it was animated by our lovely Karina Kingdom. And guess what? Not only is it its own ability wings, but it has to work in transition, like we talked earlier, with the hero. So it's one of these perfect examples where once it's all put together, we have a seamless transition, hopefully, between his base wings and his ability wings.
And Karina, for that specific animation right there, how much of a pain is it to make sure that his cloth is not clipping through his arm, like the drapings that come off his hood, to make sure that doesn't clip through his arm when he moves that fast. Do you really have to pay attention to that and have to sometimes go back and be like, oh shoot, I messed up?
Yeah, the first thing I do whenever I animate anything is I ignore the clipping and I let it just go through. And it's not until the very end of production where I will go through every single animation and check where everything is and make sure that it isn't. That was something that I was constantly struggling with, particularly with his ribbons.
Yeah.
With the wings, I'm not worried. If anything is ethereal and see-through, I'm fine with things clipping through that. And particularly if it happens really fast across like one frame, no one's going to notice it. It's going to be something that only the developer knows about.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Karina, while we're on you, can you talk a little bit about cloth in Heroes? Because that is its own challenge.
Yeah, so one of the things that is unique to Heroes is that we allow like multiple computers, like types to work with our game engine. And so we can have both cloth physics, which is computer-generated cloth, and we can also have physics turned off. And what that means is that every single character in game, we need to animate all of the cloth. And for Mattel, that was like a particularly unique challenge because every single piece has to be animated, hand animated, and we follow like the pathing in particular is something that's really, really finicky to make it look realistic. The first character we did that with was Oriole. She had this really cool ribbon tech that Steve Miranda is just absolutely improving with every character. With Malthael, we got the ribbon tech continued, and then Kel'Thuzad, it went even further.
And she may not have emphasized that. She did all three of those in a row, so
I was dreaming about ribbons.
it was a lot of work. So I think we have a question over here.
Hi, I was blown away by Orphea's VFX design. So how did you start researching doing all that like kind of effects, and what design challenges did you see going into it?
That is a great question. Orphea had a lot of iteration. We're fortunate enough to work with some really talented artists across the board, but Orphea specifically went through a lot of different stages. We started early trying to prototype and get something into the game. We had base models that we got from our character artist Vadim, and we tried to animate those and put in some temp effects as early as we could to try and figure out what works. Because the number one thing that we have to focus on is our gameplay design. One of our core values is gameplay first, and that's absolutely the number one thing we think about, whether we're doing design or art or animation. So for Orphea, it was definitely a challenge to try and make her as exciting as possible, but also make her fit, the really unique and fun gameplay that Kyle Dates was trying to bring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question.
This is a follow-up with his, and mine is catered towards Thomas with effects. When you're working in Max or Maya to create effects, how do you design it so that it reads the same in Max as it would in, let's say, Unity or Unreal when you're making hand-painted textures for the effects?
So these are tools, and I mean, this is something that I would stress for anybody that wants to try and get into games. Don't be tied down to whatever software you're using. It's really about the fundamentals that you're trying to bring. So whether I'm using Max or Maya or Unreal or Unity, the foundation of all of it is exactly the same. A particle system is a particle system. It comes down to more about the understanding of how you're going to use it. You can learn a tool, learn where the buttons are in a different tool. As long as you're able to apply the knowledge and the skills that you have to those programs, you'll be able to succeed. And so for us, we have our tools in Max, and that's primarily where we work. When it comes to hand-painted textures, I use Photoshop, but those are going to translate across whatever program you're working with.
Okay. I think we have
the game so far?
Oh, I love it. It's so much fun.
So we've got multiplayer, we've got single player. What are you going to be doing?
I'll be playing with my husband and my little boy.
How old is your little boy?
He's 8.
8 years old. What a time to learn to slay some demons. Well, Demon Hunter, I don't know if you want to maybe go check that out over there. There's definitely a demon. You better go get to that demon and definitely leave your controller behind so I can play this game. Thank you so much. How are we doing? What color am I?
Good, you're purple.
Oh, I'm purple? All right, sweet. Oh, I'm coming in, guys. Big one, big play. Watch out. There's this big!
I wanted to check in with my good friend Demetrius Johnson to see how his BlizzCon's been going so far. Also, we have a ton of top-notch cosplayers back here. Hey, guys, make some noise if you're happy about BlizzCon, if you're having a good time here. Having such a good time. Demetrius, man, it's always so good to see you. Now, for those of you guys who don't know Demetrius, he is an MMA champion, 11 title defenses, a one athlete, and a big-time gamer for those of you who didn't know, too, man. How's your BlizzCon going so far, dude?
It's been awesome. I mean, just being out here, seeing all the cosplay, I mean, these outfits are absolutely amazing. And this woman spent 400 hours on her outfit. So, I mean, you gotta give it up to her. Other than that, man, been watching the World of Warcraft arena, some StarCraft, also some Overwatch, just enjoying the whole thing, man.
Now, I saw you actually over at the WoW Arena desk, you know, doing your young commentating thing, man. Is there a future for you possibly doing some esports commentary, man?
I mean, we'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Street Fighter V, Dragon Ball Fighters, World of Warcraft. We'll see where I fit in. You know, I'm gonna get in when I fit in. You know, I'm not gonna try to force my way into something like that.
So is this your first BlizzCon?
First BlizzCon.
Tell me, what's been your biggest takeaway so far since you've been here?
I mean, obviously, the open ceremony was pretty awesome. Seeing the new updates coming to World of Warcraft BFA, the new Diablo Immortal coming to, you know, mobile now. I mean, just honestly, overall, the whole experience has been fantastic.
Right. And, you know, I think that there's so much uniqueness here at BlizzCon. You know, for me, it's pretty much like a family reunion, but has there been anything for you that you've kind of noticed that's been like a big standout, you know, that differs from other conventions that you've been to?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've gone to multiple conventions, TwitchCons. I've been to that for 3 years. And the difference that I feel in Blizzard is that it's more of a community, it's more of a family. You know, I can come up to a stranger, like I can look at her, I'm like, oh, she's, what was it? What did you say it was? A necromancer. That is a really the thing, but I can tell that she's a necromancer. We can elaborate on Diablo 3, the expansion that came out. You go to TwitchCon, there's so much thing. They're not there for one game, so we're all here for the love of Blizzard games.
Right, and it makes you feel more in tune with who you're speaking with and things of that nature. Yes. All right, last question for you, man. Horde or Alliance? I gotta know.
It's Horde all day. When I look at her outfit, it reminds me of the Paladin Transmog for a Horde, the way it sits there. All she's missing the mask and the red and the yellow stuff. So I'm like, is that WoW or is it, what is it? So, but yeah, Horde all day.
You heard it from Demetrius Johnson himself. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. Give it up one more time for Demetrius and all these good cosplayers right here. Thank you guys so much.
Welcome to World of Warcraft Q&A.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the World of Warcraft Q&A for BlizzCon 2018. Thank you for being here. Very excited. Big round of applause for our, I almost said contestants. That's not right, is it? For our panelists, we have Alex on the far end, Ian, John, and Chris. Big hand for them. For those who are wondering who the heck I am, my name is Scott Johnson. I'm the host of the Instance podcast and have been. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I've been doing it since 2006. Been playing WoW since 2003 in the Friends and Family Alpha.
Yeah.
And we established the world's largest guild at one point. They're still going strong. The great big worldwide community. Had some great interviews in the past. People like Chris Metzen and others. If you haven't heard the show, you should check it out. And this year, I got a Podcaster Hall of Fame award, and I would like to say that if it wasn't for World of Warcraft or the Warcraft community, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you all for that very much. I'm humbled to be here, and thank you, Blizzard, for inviting me. All right, let's get right to it. We are going to jump into our first question and not waste any time. And we're going to start with audience questions. It's over here, right? There we go.
Hello, once again. My name is Ro. And I have a question that's somewhat related to both lore and the Warfront system. Or, I'm sorry, not the Warfront system. I was thinking of something else. Anyhow, we've seen more choices and more player agency in this expansion, particularly in the beginning when you had the option to wear masks and spread the blight. And for some people that are in the know, for upcoming content, there is a questline involving Sarfang that also gives a moment of agency for Horde players. I'm not going to go further than that. That being said, how important is it to the team that these moments of player agency happen throughout the course of the expansion for both factions, and how important is it for these moments to have repercussions for the future?
It's a great question. Moments of agency can only really happen if there are repercussions, because otherwise it doesn't really matter, right? And then you have to ask yourself as a developer and as a player, why did I even have to go through all this rigmarole? So for us, this is more of an experiment. I think we want to be careful about the number of things that we give you these choice moments for. Don't want to send you out in the field to collect pumpkins and ask you whether or not you want to collect the orange ones or the yellow ones. I think those are pumpkin colors. Because that's kind of a nonsense choice. However, if it's, do I want to back the Banshee Queen or do I want to back Sarfang, that's an interesting choice. That is your choice. And we want to make sure that we do have repercussions for the actions you've taken and that it does go somewhere. So right now what we're really kind of doing is testing the waters. And we want to make sure, though, anytime you are presented with that type of a choice, that it has, that it matters.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, next question. Thank you for that. Oh!
All right, so Mr. Johnson, I have two questions. Alliance, I don't want to offend you. The first question is, Horde, where are you at? Good, I'm glad you're here. Oh, hell. Alliance, where are you at? Excellent, excellent. My question is on behalf of the Horde. Good Lord, everyone, can we have a round of applause for Alex's sexy V-neck? Look at that. It's one of the things I miss most about work is that sexy man right there. The second question is, when is the Horde getting its true war chief back? That was it.
Thrall? Oh. You're talking about Thrall? Thrall.
Wait, who?
Thrall? I think he means
Thrall.
Alex, you want to do that one?
I could field it probably. I miss you. We all do. That's a great question, person I've never met before. I had no idea you'd be here. You know, I'm going to guess, I will surmise, there may very well be a job posting up soon on the Orgrimmar War Board, looking for new war chief. I don't know, it might happen. And if there is, we'll call you.
Hey, love you guys. I miss you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Metzen. Voice of Thrall confirmed. All right, next question, please.
How are you going to follow that one?
I apologize to whoever has to follow that. I'm sorry.
Good luck.
Hi. My name's Reckles. I run the YouTube channel Want to Buy Gold. I'm a gold maker. I'm here on behalf of all of them, and my question is that the 20% auction house fee has hurt a lot of casual players. Did you have any other ideas when you were implementing it, and when will it be removed, if so?
So the 20% auction house cut is only taken if you list an item and it doesn't sell. And it only applies to select stackable trade goods like flasks or herbs. And this was part of trying to nudge players a little bit to not make so many single stack listings, because you pay the same cost if you're listing a stack of 20 or 100 as you do if you're listing a single one. That said, it's a Band-Aid. There is actually a pretty fundamental rewrite of our auction house architecture that's required. And yeah, it's pretty long in the tooth. And I think as we've been able to increase concurrent realm populations over the years, we finally hit a point where actually one of the limiting factors on how many people we can put in a single realm at the same time is the auction house just crumbling under that load. So we're trying to just kind of pump the brakes a little bit, but we need to rebuild the foundations. It's something we're actively working on.
Okay.
And then at that point, there'll be no need for the Band-Aid anymore.
Good. Thank you.
Before I take the next question, it strikes me that the auction house fees, if people are complaining about them, not saying he was, but generally speaking, people don't want to spend more gold on more stuff. I just have a recommendation. If you haven't played Classic yet here on the show floor, go be reminded what it's like to not have any money. 1 gold, take you a long time. All right, next question, please.
Hi, my name is Wayne, and the question I have, will the items in WoW Classic, will the transmog be added to the live Battle for Azeroth account on the shared Steam account? Like the remove Diaphy's armor and the various other items.
This is John. I think your question's related to, you want